get started now. So in case I haven't met you, my name is Sheila Nathan. I'm a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and a Christian educator. Education has been important in my family for a few generations. In fact, I feel like every other aunt and uncle and several cousins are all teachers. And both my parents have been advocates of pursuing education to whatever level one is capable of. Later in life, my parents came to the realization that education is great for this life, but knowledge of God was good for this life and the next. I originally trained as an accountant, and after coming to faith for the first time, I asked God what it is He wanted me to do. And that's how I ended up being a teacher. And I've been teaching for nearly 30 years, primary, secondary, state schools, Christian schools, and various subjects. Yet I'm still a student. Pursuing further education has given me the opportunity to clear in my own head what I believed about education, as well as answering a question that has bothered me for a long time. I noticed that when I visited my children or other children in kindy or pre-primary, there was so much enthusiasm for learning. By the time they came to me in high school, they were bored and disengaged. What happened to that love of learning? Well, about 2.5 years ago, my mother passed away, and that started me on a new journey. My question was, where in Perth were there schools that taught students to think Christianly and encourage the pursuit of knowledge and a godly life? Could Perth have another Christian school? As I went around asking these questions, I found classical Christian education. Or was it that classical Christian education found me? To best understand what classical Christian education is, and to make a good case for supporting its cause, we need to first define 3 terms. Term 1, education, and then Christian education, and then classical Christian education. So what is education? Alan Bloom, philosopher, said that education is the movement from darkness to light. What is the modern understanding of education? If you would ask most people what education is, they would begin by talking about knowledge. After all, education is accomplished by learning, and we humans have lots to learn. From the acquisition of knowledge, the majority view is that education is the purpose of gaining skills in order to be competent to do a job. So the main reason we educate children is so that they can get a job, right? Being employed, being able to support one's family, and support worthwhile causes are all good things. Could there be a better way to define education? The Latin root of the word education literally means to lead out. So, what does education lead a child out of? Out of ignorance, foolishness, and a lack of knowledge, and into wisdom. At its core, education is leading people from darkness to light. All human beings need education because we are fallen sinners with sinful and weak minds who need to learn. We are not computers that have been pre-programmed with information. We need to be led out of ignorance, out of our lack of knowledge, into knowledge and wisdom. So that leads us to the next term, Christian education. What is education that is Christian? If to educate is to lead out, then it is important to know who and what is doing the leading. In other words, education is defined by content and teacher, as well as method and context. Who is being taught? Who is teaching? How is the content taught? And why are we learning what we are learning? Asking these questions leads us to the fact that education that is Christian asserts that education is moral. The goal of a secular school is to provide an education that is morally neutral. Religiously neutral education is impossible. Secularism is not neutral. Secularism is hostile to biblical Christianity. Also, you cannot educate a human being unless you know what a human being is and what he is made for. Who are we? Why are we here? What were we made for? Any educational system that does not start by asking such questions and does not insist on having satisfactory answers to them is doomed to futility and failure. Education that is Christian affirms that human beings were created in the image of God, to enjoy Him through fellowship with Him, to glorify Him by serving Him as His deputies and regents in the rule and care of the earth. Christian education should be different. Providing education as Christians is to move us in the direction of human flourishing and wholeness. A wholeness informed by a biblical view of what humanity is. Christian education develops the whole person to glorify God in every area of whole life. Holistic education points us upward to God while also relating everything in life to God. Education starts with anthropology, the doctrine of God. So Christian education starts with Adam and Eve, reigning over the garden of nature, representing the Creator in His creation. Christian education has a critical role to play alongside the church and the home in passing on the biblical worldview to the next generation. Christian education is about Proverbs 9:10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insight. So what is education that is both Christian and classical? An education that is both Christian and classical is an appreciation of truth, beauty, and goodness. It also requires discernment. Plato said that the object of education is to teach us to love beauty. In a complex world that requires analysis, and a fallen world that requires discernment of truth from error, students need to be solidly grounded in the tools and methods of critical thinking. In a fallen world that requires discernment of good and evil, students need to be well versed in God's revelation. They should be students and followers of the scriptures, understood by the careful use of those tools of critical thinking which are applied through sound hermeneutics in the light of the wisdom of the Christian tradition. In classical Christian education, the curricula, the approach, and virtue are all brought together. As parents and church members, we are ultimately responsible for educating our kids, biological kids, as well as the children in our communities. Let's not shrink back from this task. The church is the body of Christ and is made up of redeemed human beings created in the image of God to serve Him in all of life in this wonderful world. There will be no recovery of relevance in the church until it is committed to an education that reflects these truths, that seek to develop whole persons who will glorify God in every area of a whole life. We have work to do in bringing together the curricula, approach, and virtue. There is human flourishing. Now we move on to the content and method of classical Christian education. Classical Christian education is defined by its classical method. It's a model focused on the trivium, a Latin word meaning 3 roads, where all of learning is broken down into 3 distinct but overlapping phases. The grammar phase. Grammar in this case means elementary or basic rules. This stage includes a great deal of language, including teaching Latin. During the younger years, children possess a great ability to memorize large amounts of material, even though they may not understand its significance. The next stage is the logic or dialectic stage, which is like the middle school phase. Then there's the rhetoric stage, which is the high school age. With regards to classical content, not all Christian classical curriculum is the same, but they all follow a basic pattern revolving around the study of the classics. The classics include study of God's Word, which is the most classic of texts. Then the study of God's world, the physical universe, science, and understanding the world. Latin and Greek, the ancient languages. Great children's literature. Great books, considered the classics. Logic and math. History, world history integrated with church history. And the arts. There are various analogies for classical Christian education. Classical Christian education could be compared to a garden. This involves growth and things that are living. There is the potential for growth from a seed. It is beautiful and tranquil. It invites contemplation. It is a lovely place to be alone or with companions and friends. A garden requires care and cultivation, kindly attention and nourishment. Weeding suggests that we are to teach and guide to eliminate vices. There is a divine presence in this garden. The chief gardener is God himself. Classical Christian education could be compared to a cathedral. The cathedral is large and grand. It stands as a beacon. It has been built over generations. It is rich and has stood the test of time. This is a great treasure, and a great amount of time was taken to hand down something as beautiful as this. Your head goes up when you walk into a cathedral. The cathedral is large. It draws people together and creates unity under the lordship of Christ. Classical Christian education could be compared to a grand table. Education can be compared as a feast. The table is where you find sustenance. We find things that are delightful and savory. This is a festive occasion where we can grow and learn together. A place to linger and have long, relaxed conversation. Who is at the table with you? Those who have gone before are mystically able to be present. They are part of the great conversation. Christ is at the table, inviting us to commune with him. Classical Christian education could be compared to a great road or a path. Jeremiah 6 says to keep us to the ancient paths. Classical Christian education is like walking along a tried and proven path. So let me tell you a little bit about who we are. We are a group of Christians. We all have some sort of expertise in education. Next year there will be 2 teachers, both of whom have many years of teaching in local Christian schools. Teachers at our school continue their education by participating in courses to be classical Christian educators. We are a community who desire to see classical Christian education using a classical curriculum. We are a viable alternative. The vision of classical Christian education Perth is to become an institution that is serious about scholastic and cultural promotion. One which is both extraordinary and exemplary in every way, and full of virtuous scholars. We want to be seen as an institution that is a formidable force in the expansion and enrichment of Christ's kingdom. Our mission is to seek to provide a distinctly Christian education in the classical tradition. Our mission is to equip people to know, love, and practice that which is true, good, and beautiful, so that students strive to live purposely and intelligently in serving God's kingdom by serving God and his needs. We are a part of the Association of Classical Christian Schools, which provides us with support and accountability. This year, we have run a pilot project in Gospels. We had the opportunity to implement what we have learned and are learning about the curriculum and pedagogy of classical Christian education. We have 11 students, ranging from 5 to 9. Classical Christian Education Perth is the association that will operate the school, Coram Deo. We trust that in the years to come, we will have micro schools opening up in other parts of Perth. Next year, it is right here at the Billabong Community Centre. And it will run with normal school hours, meaning 40 weeks a year, 5 days a week, 8:30 to 3. Although calling it a school might be a bit far-fetched. We're more like a tutoring centre, I think. For kindy students, it will be 2 full days, Mondays and Tuesdays. If we have more students of that age, we would consider a Monday, Tuesday, or a Wednesday, Thursday option. For the others, we offer full-time tutoring. However, the compulsory sessions will be Monday to Thursday mornings when the core subjects will be taught. This means that if parents only want their children to attend the school on a part-time basis, they can just bring them on Monday to Thursday mornings. The core subjects would be Bible, history, maths, Latin for year 2 and above, and Spanish for the younger ones. And all things English, which includes linguistics, grammar, reading, writing, and literature. On Monday to Thursday afternoons, it would be enrichment subjects such as geography, science, art, music, gross motor development, and fine motor development. On Fridays, it will be a different program altogether. In this way, we believe we can provide flexibility for those who can only be present in the mornings, Mondays to Thursdays, but we will be available full-time. In the logic and rhetoric stages, we hope to provide a flexible learning center with tutors as well as online courses for students. This year, parents have let the education department know that their children are being homeschooled. And when the moderator visits, we have provided materials which show our plan and evidence of the child's work, and it has all been accepted. Let me add that there is another curriculum that is not timetable theory. That's the development of the inner person. An appreciation and discernment of truth, beauty, and goodness is woven into what is taught. We also intentionally talk to the students about the culture of the school. We have some sayings in our school like, leave it better than you find it, showing respect to people by respecting their property. I have seen a student who always neatens up the mats on the floor when no one else is watching. Another one of our sayings is try and try again. It's all just too much for a student, and he said he wanted to go home. The little girl next to him said, did you pray and ask Jesus for help? Do you want me to pray and ask Jesus for you? We anticipate conflict by teaching the kids a program called Peace-Wise Kids. I had to talk to a student who did not do any work one particular day. I took her aside and said, what's going on in here? I asked her and she said, I just didn't want to do any work today, which then gave me the opportunity to discuss with her what is going on in her inner heart. The next day, she worked so well that her teacher sent her to me to show her work. I expressed my delight, and my whole class cheered her on. We're not just preparing the child for now, but we are also preparing the child for life outside of school and for eternity. Such an education costs. So we turn to answering the question of fees. We desire to provide classical Christian education that is affordable for anyone who seeks it. The cost of kindy will be $2,500 for the year, and for pre-primary till the end of grammar stage will be $5,000 for the year. For the logic and rhetoric stages, the cost will be $8,000 for online and tutoring classes too. As a private educational institution, We rely on the support of our generous donors to help fund capital projects and student resources. So let me answer some frequently asked questions. Why Latin? The study of Latin is an important facet of the classical curriculum. It trains the mind for orderly thinking and expression. It lays a firm foundation in the grammar and vocabulary of English, and nearly 80% of all English words derive from Latin. Another question. Do we have to be Christian to have a child attend this classical Christian school? There is no requirement for a profession of faith by applicants or their families, but parents and guardians should be aware and comfortable with the fact that our philosophy of education is founded upon and informed by a biblical worldview. Question. Do students need to wear a uniform? No. However, we encourage the wearing of practical and inexpensive clothing to help students develop responsibility for choosing and looking after their own belongings. We emphasize neatness and presentability. Question. Is your school accredited? Yes, Coram Deo is accredited by the Association of Classical Christian Schools, which is an international organization. Question. How is the use of technology at the school going to be? At the grammar stage, students do not require a device. However, teachers may use technology in teaching the students. In the latter stages of logic and rhetoric, particularly for online courses, a device will be required. Question. Is the school associated with any particular church or denomination? Coram Deo is not affiliated with any church or denomination, but enjoys the support of a healthy diversity of Protestant churches. Question. What about a book list? The book list will have two categories. Firstly, it will include a list of stationery and exercise books from Officeworks, which we would like you to supply. Secondly, in the book list, there will be workbooks, etc. for English, Maths, Latin, which we will supply. The cost of the two categories in the book list will be between $50 and $150, depending on which grade your child is in the grammar stage. Question. What is your music, arts, sport program like? As a new school, we are in the process of developing in all these areas. In this early stage, we can say that all our students will participate in music, art, and sport. Question. Is there an out-of-hours care facility? There is an out-of-hours care provision that is available right here at the Billabong. You might have seen all the vans out the back there. Kids Active is an independent outside school hours care service. So what next? We will send out registration forms via email. We would like registrations to be in by mid-October so that we can be adequately prepared with materials, etc. to start in February. Once you register, I will contact you, make an appointment so that we can meet. For those who are in the pilot program this year, you won't have to fill in the registration form, but just have a word with me. Let me introduce you to Matt Marsh. He is a Christian, married, and works as an engineer here in WA, having completed his degree in Curtin last year. When he was a child, Matt completed 4 years of studies in classical Christian school in the US. Classical Christian schools research in the US about 40 years ago. We have a part of a film clip with Matt where he answers questions on what it was like when he made the transition back to a Perth high school.
So Matt, what were the challenges that you faced when you came back and studied in Perth?
I guess the first thing was being in year 6. I guess the change in class size was one of the things that sort of shocked me. Just going from I think 10 kids in our class to 20 over. That was probably the first thing that was a bit of a shock to me because I guess the amount of time that we could spend with our teachers was a lot less. So a bit less, one-on-one, which I guess in a way, coming from America, the classical education from there to the, I guess, standard education here. It actually was quite an easy change in terms of the academics. I think as John said, you know, with classical, I guess we were pushed quite a lot harder. Like we were doing algebra in, let's say, year 4. And I mean, we just weren't really given the option. I mean, it sounds bad. You weren't really given the option to fail, but that was because the teachers were there really behind you the whole way. And I think that was something, you know, coming into, you know, we come to, I think all of my year 7, year 8 here. Yeah, the first years I was here, it was quite cruisy in terms of academics, because I could slack off quite a bit. And I think, yeah, just the change in culture, that was another thing. That's probably the last thing that I'll talk about that I thought was quite shocking to me. I think it's been touched on quite a bit already. It was just very, you know, coming from a, you know, it's very, as one said, speak when you're spoken to, compartmentalized, and I think also, I mean, all credit to the teachers, because I know the teachers, they worked really hard, but having 20 odd kids that are, you know, running around, it is hard to connect with them. And then I know that, I mean, you know, I know that kids, I have seen kids in my, you know, get left behind because teachers just didn't have time to look after them. So I think that's just something else that
So question time. So I'm happy to answer general questions, but you know, maybe specific questions one-on-one would be better. Any general questions?
Yeah, I have one general one about what's mandatory in terms of they have to present the vaccination requirements for the school. We know some families is more open, and is a mandatory requirement for the school to demonstrate.
So what we are going to say is, as far as curriculum and ethos of the school, we are very different. But we feel that in this area of vaccination, we have to follow what is being done at all the other schools.
Thank you.
Yes.
So you said that you're accredited by the Association of
Yeah, Classical Christian Schools. Yes. How does it work here?
With the education
Yep.
department,
Okay.
the Australian curriculum,
Yep.
and all that, do they care?
Yeah. Do they care? This Australian.
We haven't had a moderator visit yet, actually.
Okay.
I've just been giving her off.
May I introduce you to Tom and Amy Crook and Luke Ray, who are all presently parents with kids at our pilot program. So what has happened is every child that has come to us this year are homeschooled. That's their official standing. They're homeschooled. And what happens is once or twice a year, the moderator comes to visit. And when the moderator comes to visit, I produce everything that we've done with the child. And every moderator visit that we've had this year, they've been very satisfied with what we've been doing.
There's usually a different standard with schools, though, that they need to adhere to, like the West Australian framework.
Yes, yeah. We are, so when you're in homeschool, it's as long as you're educating them.
Yes.
Yep.
Just adding her question, I believe her concern, I presume, is in case our children transfer to another school.
Yes.
Yeah, they will be accepted. That's
Yeah.
I believe it's within that question.
Yeah.
Yeah. How?
Yes, so that's why we had Matt there. So he went straight into high school after being in classical school,
Okay.
and he actually found it easier. Okay, he found it easier. So I think the fact that right now we have 11 kids, our kids are learning at a much faster rate because they get more attention. We don't have the kind of behavior problems that you have to wait for everybody. We don't have those sort of things. So our kids are really learning quite fast. So I don't think your child will miss out. Okay, so one day when you decide to take them back to mainstream, I dare say they'll be ahead. Yes.
Can you provide extension if they're particularly good in an area?
Okay, so what we've done this year is we have little groups, but they are not in age. They're according to their ability. So because we believe that every child, you know, is different. Yeah.
does it work? So you have kids in different groups and then you have one teacher teaching per group, or like how do you teach the curriculum to a bunch of kids
Yep.
when their ages are so different? And
Okay.
you said you've got 11 kids
Yep.
and 2 teachers?
Yep. So in one group, they've got what I call the non-readers. So they are mainly pre-primary and year ones, okay? And then in another group, there is the year 1, 2, the year ones who can already read, and 1, 2, and then like a 3, 4. So like a split class. I teach in a split class.
And then you just have, for example, like 3 groups, and then you just go to one group
Yes.
and then the other,
Yeah.
and then the other.
Yeah. And sometimes we might get a parent to come in to listen to reading. You know, the sort of things that as a teacher you wish you had time to do, but you don't, then you get them to come in. Yes?
What's the parental involvement like? What sort of support do you need?
Okay. If a parent volunteers, we will use the parent. It's terrible if someone volunteers and you don't need them, isn't it?
Is it required?
It's not required. Yes.
Why Spanish?
Because it is one of the Romance languages that, you know how they say Latin is dead? Latin didn't actually die. It just resurrected into various others, including Spanish. And Adriana can speak Spanish. That's why.
Portuguese, yeah.
And Portuguese. Okay, thank you for your attention. And we have a Facebook page. Please like it. And that's it. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.